Welcome back. In this section we're going to start looking in detail at forms. We've already seen that we can enter data directly into a table and maintain data in tables. So why use forms? Well, a lot of evidence over a long time has shown that a well-designed user interface in the form of a form has a positive and beneficial effect on the people who use it. It makes efficient use of the space available, and we only need to ask the users for the specific information required to complete whatever transaction or operation they're trying to perform. When we're designing forms, there are a number of key guidelines, and we're going to be following those as we go along. Within our database, we want to make our forms consistent. So we don't want to change the way that users interact with the forms. We also need to use terms on the forms that users are familiar with. Use non-technical forms where we can. Don't use generic terms like products if in fact what we mean is books. Don't clutter the forms up. Don't add too much onto one form. If there is a lot of information to gather or change, use a couple of forms or a couple of tabs on a form. Also, and this is extremely important, test everything really thoroughly. There's nothing more off-putting when somebody's trying to use a database than the thing breaking and falling over every few minutes. The other key thing with forms is to design the forms around specific tasks. Don't just put one form and then do several different tasks on it. Try to have a form for each task and only ask for what you need on each of those forms. So with those guidelines in mind, let's have a look at one or two of the existing forms from the Northwind database. Okay, let's open up the Northwind database, log in as one of the employees, and let's look at one of the forms. Let's look at employee details. Now this particular form was of course designed by somebody else, but a lot of the features on it are going to become very familiar to you as we work our way through. And this is actually an employee details form. Header on the form makes it exactly clear what it is, which is a useful thing to bear in mind. The name of the employee in question is here, and then we have the individual fields: first name, last name, company, job title. And of course we'll recognize some fields from the ones on our student form. So this has business phone, home phone, mobile phone, for example, address including a zip code, and then we have an email address, web page, and some notes. These notes are probably held on the database in the form of a memo field data type. Down at the bottom we have some very important controls which are going to be a common feature on most of our forms, and these enable us to step through the records in our database. These arrow buttons enable us to go to next record, so that's 2, 3, note the counter there, 4, and so on. And then we have a last record button. It's a bit like the end of a tape on an old video recorder, or a last track on a CD or something like that. And then we can go back to the first record with this button. The form also has a search facility, and then a number of commands up here which do specific things. For instance, we have an email button which will bring up an email dialog, which enables me, the user, to send an email to Andrew. So we have some controls on here as well, a space for a picture, and then of course a close button, which basically does the same as the standard Windows close button in the top right hand corner. So that's a good example of an employee details form. What we're now going to do is to create a form for our database. So first of all we open our database, the private tutor database, and we select the table for which we're going to create a form. We're going to create a form for the courses table. Let me just open that table to remind you what's in it. It's basically a list of courses with a code course description, an hourly rate, and the number of lessons in each course. On the Create tab on the ribbon, there is a Forms section, and we're going to use the Form Wizard, which is a very quick and easy way of creating a form from a specified table. Click on Form Wizard and away we go. Now the Form Wizard knows which fields are in our table. There are 4 of them, and if I only want certain fields on the form, I can select them at this point. So for instance, if I wanted just the middle 2, I could say I'll have course description and hourly rate. But I don't want just those 2, I want the whole lot. So there's a double arrow that moves the whole lot over. Now I can also choose fields from more than one table or query, but we're going to come back to that later on. So within the wizard, I now click on Next, and if you look at the picture here, it lets me choose a layout for the form I'm going to have. I can have a columnar layout, so arranged by column, tabular layout, arranged in a tabular form, datasheet layout, just like the datasheet layout for the table itself, or a justified layout like this. Let's try the first one. Let's try the columnar form. Then we go Next. What title do you want for your form? Well, I'm going to say Courses, and I'm going to open I can either open the form now to view or enter information, or I can modify the form's design. Well, I'm going to open the form now and let's see what it looks like. One of the most noticeable things about this new form is that it shares some of the properties of the example we saw in the Northwind database just now, almost straight away. We have a search button. We have, although it's grayed out, a filter button there. And then we have our little set of controls: next record, previous record, last record, and so on. And we even have a new record button. This is the button, if we press that, we finish up with an empty form, and we can type in the details of another course. Hourly rate for that we'll say is $30, and it's a 6 lesson course. And basically that facility means that we've got now a form that will enable us to look at existing records and add records, and as we'll see shortly, it'll give us a way of deleting records as well. And that was using a form wizard that did pretty much the whole job for us. Now the form may not be exactly the sort of look and feel that you want, but it certainly does the job.